right, not only for companies, but for the women who don't want free birth control, who recognize that free birth control is a lot more expensive than the birth control you buy with the money that you earn. The most expensive stuff is the stuff the government requires us to get for free. So even women are going to be better off if their employers say, I want out of this requirement because of my religion. But here's an example of how this was covered on the news. Here's on Fox News Sunday yesterday with Chris Wallace. They're talking about the rights of Holly Lobby to, express their religion, and listen to how the left counters it. You've got Democratic Congresswoman Xavier Becerra. Cut number 5.
If I own a company and I have strong religious beliefs, the government can tell me to violate those beliefs in terms of providing birth control coverage to my employees.
The government will not violate anyone's religious beliefs, but no one has the right to discriminate against a woman because of her own beliefs. And I believe that the Supreme Court will find that no business should be allowed to discriminate against women, and we've gone beyond that. We should also try to pay them equally for the work that they do.
We're not talking about what a man does. We're talking about...
See, first of all, what does it have to do with discrimination? They're not discriminating against women. They just don't want to pay for women's birth control. How is that discrimination? Not to want to pay for women to have abortions is not discrimination. I mean, they're not paying for men to have abortions either, right? They're applying this thing equally. Here's another little bit more of the discussion, cut 6.
Protect a woman's rights to be able to earn the same pay, to be able to
live a life. The owner's right to his religious freedom, his religious beliefs.
The owner has a right to his or her religious beliefs, but that doesn't mean you get to discriminate against women if women have different beliefs than what the owner has, and the woman wants to exercise her rights under the Constitution.
Congressman,
yeah, the woman doesn't have any rights under the Constitution to demand that her employer pay for her birth control. What constitutional rights is he talking about? And this is not about pushing your religious beliefs on other people. Holly Lobby is not preventing any of its female employees from having abortions or buying birth control. They're free to take their paychecks and buy whatever birth control they want. The only thing is you can't force Holly Lobby to pay for it. And how does that violate the rights of their employees? And, if the employees of Holly Lobby want to have free birth control included in their compensation, then go to another company that does. They don't have a right to work at Holly Lobby. Nobody has a right to demand to be employed by a particular employer. If you don't like the compensation package that your employer offers you, then you're free to sell your labor to another employer. Right? If your employer doesn't want to give you enough vacation time, if he doesn't want to give you enough sick leave, if he doesn't want to accommodate, give you a flexible enough schedule, don't work there. As simple as that. So if you want your employer to pay for your birth control, then don't work at Holly Lobby. Simple. There's nobody's rights. The only rights that were being violated were the rights of Holly Lobby. Now, also in this argument, Chris Wallace says, what if you have strong religious beliefs? You don't need to have strong religious beliefs. You just need to assert a religious belief. The First Amendment doesn't say Americans that have strong religious beliefs. You could just have a very, very minimal religious belief. And, even religion, it could just be moral, it could be ethical. All that falls into freedom of expression, freedom of religion, worship, whatever you want. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you could be an atheist and still say that it's against my religious beliefs and I don't want to pay for somebody's abortion. So this is going to be big news. I'm going to talk about it more in hour 2, because also, what does it mean about all these rules about forcing people to bake wedding cakes for homosexuals or photograph gay weddings? I think this is going to overturn a lot of that. I'm going to talk, though, a little bit more about this Hobby Lobby decision. And, of course, it's not really just Hobby Lobby. Everybody's got a stake in this. Supreme Court ruling about a half hour ago in favor of Hobby Lobby, and their claim that they did not want to pay for birth control because certain forms of birth control amounted to abortion. But, I don't even think abortion even has to be raised. I mean, what if your religious beliefs say that premarital or extramarital sex is a sin? If you believe that people should not be having sex outside of marriage, if that is your religious belief, why should you be required to provide your employees with contraception if you know that the employees are single? In fact, Catholics, to my understanding of the Catholic religion, all birth control is a sin. You're not even supposed to use any of it, right? I mean, if your abstinence is the only thing that's allowed, right, via the Catholic Church. Now, maybe the Catholic Church is softening its stance, but what if you're a Catholic and you're like, I don't want to soften my stance. I'm old school. I don't believe in any birth control whatsoever. I don't believe in sex outside of marriage. I am not going to encourage sinning on my employees. I am not going to provide them with birth control. If they want to go out and buy birth control with their wages, well, I can't stop them from doing that, but I'm certainly not going to give them birth control and be a party of their sin. And I'm not going to, encourage them in their sin. Maybe in their perspective, that would make them a sinner too, right? But, we shouldn't have to couch everything in terms of religion. You shouldn't have to have a religious objection. Any objection should be good. I just don't want to do it. It's my company. These are the jobs that I want to offer, and this is how I want to pay. And if people don't like the terms, then don't work for me. I mean, that's how it should be. And again, if you're an employee, you should be able to say, I want wages. I don't care about free birth control. I don't want it. I don't care about vacations. I don't care about sick days. I just want extra money. The government shouldn't be dictating to Americans, whether they're employees or employers, what terms under which they need to be employed. The same thing goes for the minimum wage and all these issues. The government has no business sticking its nose in where it has no constitutional authority to get involved. But as I said earlier, for some reason, the government has used the Commerce Clause and other parts of the Constitution to get around our rights. The only place we still have rights is in religious freedom. So to the extent that you want to assert your rights, you have to couch it in your religion. And with birth control, it was pretty easy to claim that it is a religious belief. Other things might be more difficult. But one that I don't think would be this whole idea about the bakers or the photographers who do not want to participate in gay weddings, who don't want to photograph gay weddings, or who don't want to bake cakes knowingly that are going to be used in a gay wedding. And you should have a right. And I think this Supreme Court decision certainly will embolden and maybe result in a legal challenge to these situations. It was Arizona, right, that wanted to do that, I believe, and the governor was, chickened out of signing it. But this court case could give her cover as to why it should be allowed. Although I don't think you need legislation anymore now that the Supreme Court has come down. Certainly, you would be within your rights not to bake a cake for a gay wedding. Although, how is it that the baker even knows? If I want somebody to bake a cake, I mean, does a gay wedding cake look any different than a straight wedding cake? I mean, unless you're talking about, the figures that you put on the top. You put two men up there as opposed to a man and a woman, but you don't have to have the baker put those on. I mean, you can just order a cake. You don't have to tell the baker that the people getting married are gay. Just say, bake me a wedding cake and go pick it up. And they're not even going to know that it's a gay wedding. Obviously, a photographer is going to figure it out because the photographer is going to be there. When he doesn't see a bride, when he sees two grooms, he's going to have an idea that something's going on. And but if he's just baking the cake, I mean, how many cake bakers are actually at your wedding? Maybe if it's part of the whole catering process, but then they probably don't care. This whole thing probably happened with an individual baker, and they had to go out of their way to tell the baker that the wedding cake was for a gay wedding. But again, I can't force somebody to bake me a cake. If they don't want to bake me a cake, they don't have to bake me the cake. I mean, that's freedom. That's what freedom is all about. You could decide you don't want to bake a cake for whatever reason you don't want to bake it. And it's not like you can't get a cake from some other baker. There are plenty of bakers who will bake any cake that you want baked. right? And they'll write anything on it. I mean, you could say, what if I went to a baker and I demanded that he bake me a cake and I wanted him to write on it, something negative about homosexuals? I said, look, I want you to write that on the top. Could he refuse? Well, I think so, but I mean, the homosexual lobby would say, no, you have to bake any cake that anybody wants you to bake. Even if the cake, what if I go to a Jewish baker and I say, I want you to bake me a cake with a big swastika on the top of it, because it's for a party, we're having a celebration here at our Hitler Youth Nazi, political party, and I want you to bake me this big cake with a big swastika on it, and I want you to put an Adolf Hitler right on the top. Obviously, can a Jewish baker or any baker for that matter say, I'm not going to bake you that cake. You want a cake like that? You do it yourself. You decorate it yourself. But now, at least the people that want to exercise these rights have a legal leg that they can stand on now, thanks to a good decision by the Supreme Court. I want to go and play a little sound. This is on MSNBC. It's the reaction of the Center for Reproductive Rights, Nancy Northrup, obviously outraged by the Supreme Court's decision. Let's have a listen to what she had to say on MSNBC. This is just, 15 minutes ago or so. Here, cut number 21.
Well, for heaven's sakes, it's 2014, and over 90% of women use contraception at some point in their lifetime. It's an important part of preventative medicine for women. So the fact that the Supreme Court today decided to carve out some exception, when it comes to women's health, is wrong-headed. It's important that women be able to have this benefit of the Affordable Care Act, which is that they can have no copay contraception to protect their health and plan their futures.
So what, they have a constitutional right to have no copays in their health insurance? Says who? And since when? And first of all, what does she mean by it's 2014 already? As if what? So we should have no more First Amendment rights, that maybe nobody is religious anymore because, it's 2014. There should be no place for religion in modern society. Is that what she's saying? That religion should just sort of be bent because 90% of women use contraception? What does that have to do with the fact that employers shouldn't be forced to provide it for free just because 90% of the women choose to buy it? But what are they being denied? They're talking about their lack of access. They're not losing access to anything. Here, she focuses on access to birth control in this next clip. Clip 22. Play that.
What's next for your group?
Well, we're obviously going to be looking for as much as a fix for these women employees as possible. Unfortunately, for the employees of Hobby Lobby, their boss gets to decide their insurance coverage and how they, are able to not have coverage for contraception. So we're going to be looking for administrative fixes, legislative fixes to make sure that they get the benefit that women across America have seen from the Affordable Care Act.
Okay, first of all, the boss isn't deciding their insurance. They could go out and buy whatever insurance they want. The boss is deciding how he's going to pay the workers. And the workers could decide to accept that pay or work someplace else. And there's nothing that prevents these women from going out and getting birth control. And in fact, to act as if women are being denied access to birth control is cheap. You're talking about women that have jobs. If they have a job, they can afford birth control. It's not expensive. In fact, I mentioned before, women don't even have to pay for birth control. Just make the men pay for it, because they'll happily do it. It doesn't really cost the women anything, especially if you say, well, look, condoms, I want to use condoms. The women don't have to buy the condoms. They can, but they can just, make sure the guys, remember the old expression, no glove, no love, just, it doesn't cost you anything. Women have access. It's kind of like saying, what if my insurance company says, well, we're not going to provide, my auto insurance company says, we're not going to provide free wiper blades with your policy. Does that mean I've been denied the access to wiper blades? No, I can just go buy them. Buy them at the gas station. They're not expensive. What if my insurance company doesn't pay for my gasoline or my oil changes? Does that mean I can't get gas because my insurance policy doesn't cover it? No, I just buy the gas. Insurance isn't for birth control. It never was supposed to be. This is all about a freebie that the government wants to give out. And remember, you got all these college gals saying, I don't have any birth control. I can't remember one time in my college career where birth control was ever a financial burden on anybody. On anybody. I never had a date in college where the woman said, yeah, I just can't afford birth control. Or the guy said, yeah, I can't afford it. It's too expensive. All you had to do, guys are more than happy to pay. How much is a guy spending to take a girl out on a date? Take her out to dinner? Take her out to the movies? The cost of the condom is a rounding error in that bill. Nobody is going to object to that. Even if there was a relationship, if a girl said to her boyfriend, look, we can stop using condoms if I go on the pill, but I can't afford it. The guy's going to say, okay, how much does it cost? Here's the money. Everybody is going to find a way, even if a guy doesn't have a job, and his girlfriend says, look, I need money for birth control pills, he'll go out and get a job just so he has the money. It's never a problem for women to afford contraception. This is all a political stunt on the part of Obama to try to buy the votes of women by simply promising them something for free. Right? Just something that they could easily afford on their own, or they can push off on some guy, and instead they're saying, vote for me because you're going to get this freebie. And if you're opposed to this free stuff, well, you're anti-women. That's all this is about. But at least the Supreme Court, in a way, can put a stop to it. Unfortunately, they limit the rights. If you're a big corporation, you got to provide it. But if you're a small corporation, closely held, they've adopted the IRS definition of a closely held company, which means that half the company has to be owned by 5 or fewer people. And if that's the case, you meet the definition, and now you can assert your religious freedoms, which actually might give the small companies a benefit, because now they can offer women more money instead of birth control that they might not want. Right, so it puts the smaller company at an advantage in the labor market, because now they can pay women more money instead of having to give them overpriced birth control that they may not even need. There are plenty of women that don't want birth control for whatever reason. Some of them are too old to need it. Right, so they're postmenopausal. Why do they have to pay